If you're ever talking to someone about Islamic rulings, they might say something like, "It's not haram, but it is makruh, so we should avoid it." And you might wonder, what's that? What's makruh? And how is it different from haram? Well, let's find out together. In Islam, there's two main categories that define what is permissible and what is forbidden: halal and haram. Now imagine haram and halal as two pieces of land. I'll color the halal land as green and haram one as red. Now imagine the two pieces of land overlap and there's a little piece of land in between. We can call this the gray area. This gray area is what is known as makruh. In other words, you can say that makruh is the borderline between halal and haram. Like how we might say, that joke was borderline offensive. It didn't fully cross the line, but it definitely might have made the other person uncomfortable. So in very simple terms, makruh means something that is disliked or discouraged in Islam. It's not strictly forbidden or haram, but, emphasize on the but, it's better to avoid it. But if you do it, you're not committing a sin like you would if you were doing something haram. Think of it like a warning sign. It's better not to do it, but it's not a complete no-go. Things that are clearly halal or haram are for the most part clearly defined by Allah in the Quran and through the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in Hadith. For example, the Quran clearly states that murder is haram, obviously, and there's no question about it. On the other hand, chicken, my personal favorite, is halal, as long as it is raised and slaughtered according to the Islamic guidelines. But then there might be certain things that aren't clearly mentioned. Let's just take a really common example. Smoking tobacco. It's not explicitly mentioned in the Quran or Hadith, but many scholars consider it makruh, or even haram nowadays because of the harmful effects. But that's the thing, you have two scholars. One might say it's haram, and the other might say it's not haram. But you should avoid it, because it harms you, and it doesn't really have any benefit. And because neither side has clear proof or evidence, they might just meet in the middle ground, that gray area we talked about earlier. So smoking tobacco gets labeled as makruh, and everyone just goes on about their day. There's a lot of things that are makruh, but not haram. And the purpose of this video isn't to list them all, but to get you to understand why they exist. Now here's something important to note. While makruh might not be haram, it's better to leave it or to avoid it. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has actually warned us about makruh things. What is lawful is clear, and what is unlawful is clear. But between them are doubtful matters about which many people do not know. So whoever avoids doubtful matters clears himself in regard to his religion and his honor. But whoever falls into doubtful matters eventually falls into what is unlawful, like the shepherd who pastures around a sanctuary, and at last he will inevitably pasture in it. I know that's a lot to unravel, but in simple terms, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is basically telling us to avoid makruh things, or it can eventually lead us into sins. Think of it this way. When someone smokes tobacco a lot, their body kind of gets used to it, like it builds up a tolerance. So that first strong feeling they used to get just isn't there anymore. Because of that, some people might start looking for something stronger to get that same buzz. That's when they could end up trying things like marijuana or even harder drugs, which are definitely haram and a lot more harmful. I know that's a stretch, and it probably won't happen to the majority of people, but it's just an example. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is sometimes our actions can lead to bigger problems and bigger sins. That's exactly why the Prophet, peace be upon him, warned us about makruh things. Because if we ignore those warnings, it might take us down a risky path. So to sum it up, makruh things sit in that gray area between halal and haram. They're discouraged for a reason, not because they're the worst sins, but they can quietly lead us towards bigger problems if we're not careful. So it's best to avoid them.